Alexa, play smooth jazz radio on Pandora.
Okay, smooth jazz
Alexa,
radio.
volume 2. All right, let's see how let's make sure everything is straight. Make sure we got everything going good before we get into this. All right, what's up? What's up? What's up, people? What's going on? Man, it's been a minute since I hopped on here. Matter of fact, let me do one more thing. Let me take this link and let's go ahead and share this to Facebook, Twitter, all of that. You know, just kicking it. July 4th. Talk black to me. All right, so I ain't really come on here with no set plan or set agenda or anything. We just talking, having a regular conversation on this Fourth of July. So you see, man, this is my Fourth of July shirt. I always rock this. American grown with African roots. American grown with African roots. It's a little bit of conflict. I know we finally starting to celebrate Juneteenth. So everybody's like, all right, so we're gonna celebrate Juneteenth from now on, and we're not gonna celebrate July 4th, because we wasn't free. You got the speech that Frederick Douglass gave back in the day, to what is a slave is to what is to the slave, what is July 4th? And so, like I said, I ain't really come on with no set agenda. It's just been a minute since I recorded, since I talked to everybody. A lot going on in the community, across the nation. Whether you're thinking about the affirmative action situation, just the rise in violence. But I mean, I think in order to solve and combat any of that, you definitely have to get us on the same page. You know what I'm saying? What's the black agenda essentially? And I know that I don't think we ever really even talk about that or really ever think about that. We don't typically have those conversations about what that agenda is. And I think first and foremost, the most important agenda should be yourself, right? And it seems like, in the age of so much information, access to so much information, I gotta call it like I see it. And we just intellectually lazy. Like we're making that decision to just not really study, not really read, because I don't really know if we're coming at this with a purpose. I feel like most of the time we just kind of like existing, getting pulled this direction, that direction, day by day. We gotta come at it with some type of purpose, but that purpose, as it's individualized, there has to be that individual purpose that exists, but then you gotta have that collective initiative, that collective purpose that exists as a society and as a people. I don't think we have that right now. You got the BET Awards, people saying that was ghetto. They was saying like how some people were acting and in a crowd and the clothes that was being worn. And it's just we're also in this age of really expressing our freedoms, right? But our freedoms are coming at the cost of standards. What is that collective standard? Time and place, right? So, how do we want to represent ourselves? How do we want to be represented? I think these are all important conversations and topics that we got to have as a society and as a people to really chart that course on the direction that we're going in. And I don't necessarily, see that. So on the day where you celebrating freedom, on the day where you celebrating independence, you kind of got to ask that measure. You got to do that measure and that benchmark to ask yourself, well, where where did we come from, right? And then where are we going? Where are we at? And then where are we going? And so in trying to express our freedoms, right? In trying to express ourselves to really be our authentic selves, you got to ask that question: is what we're doing authentic? Are we like, have we exceeded the borderline, and have we compromised our standards, all in the all in the like space of recognizing that I have this ability to be who I want to be. I have this ability to express myself in this authentic tone. Um, but I think some of us, right, are fighting for the wrong things. Like we're fighting to push the stereotypes that was pushed on our people way back when. And I had got into this interesting conversation, this interesting dialogue not too long ago, and we was talking. We always hear about the impacts that slavery has on our community, right? And one of the things that came up was when you look right after 1865 and you look around the 1900s, 1910, 1920s, up through the Great Depression, you see this quest and this representation for Black excellence, and not romanticizing the past at all, right? Because there were definitely people that fell short. But when you like look into that history, what's written and represented today is the upper echelon of Black society and Black ideals, right? So you had, right, I'm talking about people right out of slavery. I'm talking about their parents, right? Their parents and grandparents could have been people, and even themselves, right? In some instances, even themselves, depending on what year you're talking about, they were people that had direct involvement in being in the plantation system, being a part of communities where they were segregated, where they had the sharecropping situations as to where, as they were fighting to get their right to vote, they were still living on land that wasn't theirs, but they lived there so that they would have food, clothing, and shelter. But in the midst of them trying to gain the freedoms that we currently exhibit and currently have today, they were doing that at the threat of being kicked off of those lands, and then ended up being homeless at a time when not having a home, and not having a job could actually land you in prison. And so, when you look at those people who were directly impacted and affected by that, they were trying to read all types of books, right? Whether they were scratching and clawing to find out their true history before slavery, but they were also reading Greek mythology, or in Greek mythology, in a sense that they were trying to figure out what are some ideas, ideals, and ideologies that I can represent that helps me to be able to develop my higher consciousness, my higher self, right? They were fighting against particular stereotypes that were placed on them that said that they were lazy, sluggish, dumb, uh, non-ability to produce art, creativity, just any of those negative stereotypes. They were trying to do things that counteract that, right? Because they knew that that's not who they were. They knew that those were false narratives that people were trying to push out into larger worlds to represent them. And so you would think that if we're going to talk about people, if slavery has an impact, right? Because that's what is kind of some of the narratives today. it's we are in this position today, whether that's economic, socially, family oriented, single mother home, 72%, all of that. We're in that position today because these are the after effects of slavery. How come they seem to have accomplished a lot more at those times than we are pretty much accomplishing today? And I mean, of course, there is like argument that people can say, well, there's more women are getting more bachelors or more degrees, period. Working in better fields, have more important positions, of course, get into the bag, bringing in more money. But when you weigh, I think you have to weigh that on not the success of the individual per se, but you have to weigh that on the success of the people. Because regardless if you like it or not, you're going to be measured based off of the group that you are affiliated with. Which that can kind of lead into this whole conversation about the Africans and African Americans, which we can explore that. I just got to put a pin in that to go back to it. But um, there's just this level of understanding that we need to build our communities, right? We need to create jobs, industries, right? Not just jobs. We need to create industries for our community. There needs to be cooperation, whether that's cooperation in economics, cooperation in politics, um, all of this, and then you needed a piece, right, that represented and that helped promote those ideals, so that you can, if you're doing something in Harlem, you have a source of information that can get out to Chicago, that can get to Detroit. Of course, they get down the East Coast to Philly and DC, and then to make it also to the South. Dang, I don't have that book on me right now, but I'm reading oh yeah, here it is. I'm reading, I always got to come with some books, right? But I'm reading this book right here, Say It Loud, 1966, the year Black Power challenged the civil rights movement. And you got Stokely Carmichael, who was a Howard University graduate, but did phenomenal work down in Alabama. And just to get that information down there with SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, just to get that information down there, like you had to have a journal, or you had to have a periodical. And it's like, what do we have now? Essentially, that is that piece to get us this information. You can go, I think theroot.com, shout out to them, is a great source for that type of information. Like we have a lot of stuff that promotes entertainment, but where is that Black thought at, right? And some people, you may think that, okay, well, you kind of like, you're very much so like, you're fanatical about this, and I'm not really, right? But I just think there's not enough conversations that are occurring. So my goal, what I really would like to get people to do is like at least 3 days out the week, which I don't think is asking too much. Like have these conversations with your family, have these conversations with your friends, with your circle, community centers, organizations. Because I just don't think that we're having them enough. But going back to what someone as far as the impact on those who immediately came out of slavery, like they had a plan, and they also understood that unifying and unity was going to be essential, and very a very important component as to how we were going to express ourselves, but also maintain protections. And I don't necessarily see how that's occurring today. And again, we're in an age of information, and we're in an age where we're so far removed from the same conditions that they were in, but it seems like we're doing a lot less. You talk about air reconstruction, which I mean, of course, 65 to about 1877. And you had more representatives that were in Congress back then than has been in Congress, especially than we have today across this nation. So there was like real political power that was expressed, and that was realized. And I don't think we actually pay attention to the importance of politics today. And I believe that largely is because we look at politics as an individual sport, right? So you always get those people who talk about, well, my vote, what is my vote going to change? What is my vote? I'm just one vote. What is it going to challenge? How is it going to they're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. They're going to elect whoever they want to elect. And it's like, yeah, if you think like that, but you're missing the whole entire point of politics and how it's a political game, right? But it's a political game involving people that's on different teams, and it involves coordination. So yeah, your one sole vote, sure, it may not change anything. Well, it's not going to change anything, right? But your one sole vote in a collective, organized manner has profound impact that reverberates not only in your community, but across the nation and across the world. Because for one second, you can't slip up and not think that the people around the world are not looking at what we're doing here in America, and then um, mirroring that over in their communities when they have their various social issues that they find themselves up against. So it's a lot of these dynamics that we're not necessarily thinking about, and we think on too much of an individualistic mindset. So right, so when you have the economic situation that happened back in the day too, it was a goal for businesses and people to support those businesses, but for those businesses to support another business, right? Like where you may think about, oh, an individual comes and patronizes that business and pays that dollar, for whatever. We use a restaurant, but that restaurant has to source that food from somebody, right? They have to get the fresh produce, that goes into that soul food, the chicken, all of that. They have to get that from somewhere. So they were getting that from the farms and the people who are working in agriculture. When you think about the people working in agriculture in those farms, you have to think about the transportation, because it has to get there, especially if you talking about miles and miles and miles, and in some instances when you live in a big city, but there's the country, maybe in the next town over if you're lucky, but sometimes even further than that, especially depending on what you're trying to grow and what you're trying to get, which is why the South was so major and such an impact. So if you got a restaurant in New York, you could be thinking about Virginia, possibly is where you get that stuff from. So who has the transportation? um, the uniforms, the clothing, the napkins, the cutlery, all of that different stuff. But the great thing about it in the past is that those dollars were overturning several times with all those different businesses that helped to bring about the opportunity for that restaurant to exist, right? All of those dollars overturned in the Black community. So that's where the wealth was generated. Now we're not doing that at all. And especially for those of us who may own businesses, like if you own a restaurant, or let's say you own a clothing business, like where are you getting your materials from? If your materials is coming from outside of the community, then sure, I can come and buy your final product, but we kind of missing the goal if the materials that make up your final product are not also being made by people that are from within our community. So there's multifaceted layers, right? And there's these different processes and stuff that I think that we're missing along the way. We're not trying to generate. How does this all tie into the community? Well, the one thing that remains true is, right, all of us, we gotta wear the basics, right? Underwear, we gotta wear shoes, um, regular clothes, to go over regardless what your job is, whether you're wearing a uniform or. So my question is always, just for the bare minimum of what we know our community needs to thrive, even if that's soap, toothpaste, stuff like that. Where are the plants and the manufacturing centers that are Black owned, that are placed pretty much in these neighborhoods where they have the exodus of manufacturing industries? How come we're not pooling our money together to create these warehouses that make these basic essential products, which means that you can employ those individuals that may be in the neighborhoods who didn't necessarily go to college, right? So hopefully, they went to trade school. And if you opening up a warehouse or a manufacturing center, either you're gonna have to get it built, or you're gonna have to make some updates, renovations, and repairs. So now if your HVAC man, is African American, went to a particular trade school. Now your welders, are there. The people who make the materials for the uniforms, your seamstress, like people, the people who were sewing. So there's all of these opportunities where you can have different varying levels of opportunity for Black people to help that revolving dollar to stay in the community. And then as you're just making a manufacturing center, now it shifts out and it goes towards that store as where you can get fresh produce, right? Uh, there is a situation, that goes on across this community as to where we're relying on other people to feed us, right? And then if I'm thinking about, well, what is the quickest way that somebody can negatively impact my home and impact the people in my community, it would be through food, right? So you get the genetically modified food, you get produce that has all types of pesticides on it, not the proper care, food that's injected, right? I would think if I'm going to be leery, right, about not trusting outsiders, then the one thing that I would try to protect for my community would be the food source. So I really wouldn't want other people being in control of the food that I have to take in, that my family has to take in, which provides for an opportunity for somebody to go into that industry and to possibly open up a grocery store. Like, I think one of the last things that we should really be uh struggling with, right, is the way to feed ourselves, because I'm trying to focus on essential industries, right? Those things that also create sustainability and longevity for you if you're an entrepreneur, right? So those people in that immediate vicinity, whether they got cars or don't have cars, everybody has to get food, everybody has to put on clothes. And then the last thing, of course, is shelter. So who you're buying your home, who's building your home, who's making those updates to your home. You have plumbing issues, you got HVAC issues, you need windows, you need doors. Like, there's so many opportunities for us. And I'm trying to think about all the things that you can do that doesn't require you to have a college degree. Because then we can tap into the necessities of having a college degree when you start to think about your finances, your accounting, um, what else? Of course, healthcare, medicine and things like that, which I'm not there yet. Uh, so I just and then the other thing about it is that we complain from the sense of we're always asking for somebody to do for us instead of looking from within and having that central intimate conversation with each other, and especially with those coming up under us, the next generation, to really make this plan for future growth, sustainability, and production. I think it's two different conversations for one part to say, all right, there was some inequalities that existed, there were some resources that we were left out of, we didn't have access to, and we definitely are owed, just like the reparations conversation that's happening in San Francisco, right? We're owed some of that get back, for how we were left out. Can't speak against that, can't say that it's wrong or not. But the issue is when the buck stops there, and then where we have that, whatever percentage, if y'all been rocking with me, me, I like to put problems into percentages. So where the aforementioned let's just say it's 40% of the problem, right? Well, the 60% of the problem are those things that are in our control. And that's what I'm focusing on, to say we don't do enough of that to try to figure that part of it out. Um, that 60%, I think, could change, could it could be revolutionary for the depths of which we find our community in, and then how we kind of pull ourselves out of that, but then also helps to generate that sense of pride, that sense of cultural pride, helps to create that sense of togetherness, and then just also builds that morality, right? Because it's nothing. I the few things I've done, right? It's nothing like producing something with your own hands, your own sweat equity, um, and being able to look at that, right? Because it started off in your mind as a thought, as an idea, right? And then it became like a vision. So you could see, well, if we only had this, we only had that. And then you start to actually bring that stuff out into the world, and then it becomes something tangible that you have produced, but that other people can benefit from, right? We don't have enough of those conversations as a community, and something, right? When you say something that people can benefit from, but also that creates longevity and helps to perpetuate a cycle of positivity that reverberates all throughout your community. Like that, there's no experience, nothing else that just makes you feel that you're living out your full potential with this great gift that we have to be human. And so when you come from a sense of like it's a lot of consternation, right? A lot of complaining, around a lot of they're not doing this. Like you're living in that sense of victimhood and inferiority once you do that. So it actually disempowers you, right? But when you actually produce something, that becomes empowering to you. And most importantly, it's contagious. Like it's it's contagious. So now you just feel like you want to keep going, right? And then somebody else is now leeching off of that energy. And so it's creating positivity for them, right? And then they're going to bring their unique capabilities and ideas to the table, and they're going to find a way to enhance, right? And just a continuation that now you started it in this community, right? And then it went off and it just morphed and blasted itself everywhere. And I think that that's something else that's important too. Just personal, tapping into a personal situation. I battle sometimes with this. Well, if there's not a bunch of people that's trying to do it, whether it's a stream or anything, like I'm not going to do it if I can't find 30, 50, 100 other people, or if I'm not going to go viral off of this, like I'm not going to do it. But when you look into our history has so many, and history period, but our history has so many examples of how the few did things that propel the masses to get on board. And you hear this in our music as well, that nobody wants to be with you while you're out on the bus. But as soon as you get that money, and now you able to get the limos, you able to get, a tour bus instead of just ride on that city bus, right? To go to shows and do your concerts and all of that. Nobody is there. And you just looking around, and then you're looking for people, you making music. Not a lot of people, they're not playing your songs in the club, they're not playing your songs on the radio. When you put it on the streaming networks, you only get about 15, 20 listens. That stuff can be kind of disheartening, but the greatest gifts that have ever been given to society have typically always started out with the far and the few. And so, that's always going to be a struggle, I think, for anybody, but it's a necessary hurdle to get over, because like you're put here, right? And I somebody told me this a long time ago. And sometimes you can see things and recognize that things are being done and things aren't being done. And you can kind of sit back and you're just like, how in the world is this not a thing yet? How, like, humanity's been around for tens of thousands of years. Like, how come this hasn't been created? Or if you're in the community, like, how come they haven't mentioned this? And I had, you know, came to the realization after hearing and thinking about that, that's because it's for you to bring forth. It's for you to do. Like, with your time here on this earth, we all have a special mission to bring to the people that we come in contact with, to bring to the society in which we inhabit. And a lot of times the reason why things aren't happening is because people don't have that courage and confidence nor that realization to understand that you're the one who's supposed to bring it forth and create it. And as long as you don't create it, as long as you don't bring it forth, then it's not going to get done. And so that you then get into the conversation and the mindset of recognizing your uniqueness, which means being in your lane. And your lane exists because it's only for you to travel in. And so when you're traveling in your lane, sometimes that means that it's not going to be a traffic jam in your lane. Sometimes it's going to be open, straight pathway, nothing but road in front of you for you to hit the gas and just go, right? And in some other areas, we want to get out of our lane and get into somebody else's lane, and that other lane has a full-on traffic jam. Nobody's going nowhere because it's oversaturated. And it's like you want to be there, but when you go over there, you find a dissatisfaction. You feel like you can't move. You feel like nothing is getting done. Nobody's going anywhere. And
this is a reminder.
I got a Greenwise reminder that goes off every day at 9 o'clock.
This is a reminder.
Shout out Greenwise, man. Got to eat healthy. Got to get you the proper food and nutrition, right? That's because that's the only grocery store that essentially I have that's close by. But yeah, so you're in that situation, you're in that lane, and it's just not working out for you. And the reason why it's not working out for you is because you're in the wrong lane. So that if I imprint it on anybody's mind, anything, it's that there's a specific thing or things that you are supposed to do with your time here, and those things will not get done as long as you sit on the sidelines and you don't bring it forth and you don't make it happen and you don't create it. So, be okay, be comfortable with living your truth, right? Doing what it is that you're supposed to do to fix a problem and a shortcoming in this world. And then be okay with being alone. Like, it's so many. There was this quote, there is essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it was saying that there's so many people down in the field of ordinary, but there's far and few in the area of extraordinary. And I really want to find that, because, man, that right there was just an eye opener for me personally, and it really changed the way that I saw things. So here it is. So there's a ton of competition at ordinary, but there's almost none at extraordinary. So it's like, separate yourself from the herd. If you're doing something and it may not be the most popular thing to do, but it's right, it's going to make an improvement, it's going to make a necessary change, and then you got to keep on doing it. You got to move to the beat of your own drum, which I hear that a lot from my friends and peers. That's like, yeah, AK, he just kind of does his own thing. He moves to the beat of his own drum. And I think, we focus so much sometimes on fitting in, and we don't understand the power that comes in sticking out, right? Because there's courage behind that. There's promise in that as well. And so I think that where we find ourselves as a community, for our community, is we're doing so much to try to fit in, that we're not doing those things that help us stick out. And it was crazy is that where we're trying to fit in at, it's actually detrimental. It doesn't actually add value to yourself, which is the most important. But then secondarily, it doesn't add value to your family members. It doesn't add value to your community. And so, it's crazy how oversaturated the negativity is, right? It's like we try to out victim each other, or we try to out disrespect each other, or my thing is being passive. Like, we try to get see who gives the most non F's, right? I don't care. I don't, whether you're talking about your feelings. I don't care whether you're talking about what other people may think. I don't care whether you're talking about the work that you produce. I don't care whether you're talking about the brand, like what's your own personal brand, how you represent yourself, how you represent your family. I don't care with it's just just those things that I don't feel like are fruitful for us, right? They don't bear any fruit that we really need. And um, just the whole focus on so many things that don't matter, like smart individuals, like entirely intelligent, but we're intelligent about the wrong crap. Like we got people in this community. I always thought it was so crazy. And somebody gonna feel attacked, but I'm not. I'm just talking like I'm really just speaking a real, and it's not really an attack, but it may feel like it. But like dudes in my world, right? How do you know so much about another man? Like they know stats about another man. They know who this man been dating. They know what school this man went to. They know just so much information, right? And it is, for me, it's mind blowing because I'm just like, how in the world do you remember that much information? And they be on point and then be passionate and emotional about it as well when they talking to somebody else. And I guess I would be, because I'm imagining it takes you a lot of time to sit down and really imprint and impress on your mind somebody's stats from like 5 or 6 seasons ago, let alone somebody who retired, no longer in the league, and that played way back. But then you're not getting paid for it. ESPN, you don't have your own show, your own podcast, or nothing. And I'm like, how do you know all of that type of information? But for the stuff that matters, finances, stock investment, health, stuff, you like your own culture and people, nothing, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like we are intellectually lazy and we're knowledgeable about insignificant things. Now, am I saying don't do that? No, I'm not saying like don't know stats and this is that. But I'm saying you can't know all of these particular stats. Then when somebody asks you about how do we institute the concepts from Black nationalism and the Black Power movement, you have no idea who that is or any of the figures that was a part of it, nor do you know where they dropped the baton and then how do we pick it up, where they made the missteps at, and then like how were they trying to build out and create bridges to wealth, right? As they got the social accomplishments, then realized that the social, they was willing to give that up because they were still taking our economics and our economics wasn't moving up. Like we had this conversation about integration, right? Segregation, integration. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. There's one thing that is true about that. When they started to dialogue about it, the reason why they allowed integration to happen anyway, right, is because they figured that they would get more economic strength by allowing us to participate and eat at their lunch counters, to attend their institutions, to live in their neighborhoods, right? To go to their hospitals. Because what it did is once they got access to your dollars, it's one thing that remains true. When you pull out your money and you invest in somebody else, you are simultaneously divesting from out of your own self, right? And then from out of your own community. So now, when we're able to go to their lunch counters, restaurants, universities, now we are adding to the money that they were already getting, right? Because they already had a certain number of dollars that were going to come to them. Now they open access, and now in this day and age, we're about 40 million, 44 million strong now in America as a Black population. So now in this day and age, they have doubled that income by 40 million, 44 million individuals, right? But here's what's not happening. There's no reciprocity because where they have, I don't even know how many it is of the other populations, but where they have their specific numbers, that money is not being spent back in our communities. That money is not being spent with our businesses, not going to our, politicians or none of that. Our I can't even say healthcare. I don't even know if there. I don't even know if there are any Black-owned hospitals, right? And if there are, we know, of course, that there's far and few. So that money, and it's not to say individuals aren't doing it. Individuals, sure, you got some philanthropic people, right? That get, but what I'm talking about is masses. We got to get out of these exceptions and we have to talk about what the masses are doing, because the masses are the ones that affect outcomes. So where it's the mass of our population is spending with their industries and investing in their communities, which is why you have such a large wealth gap, right? You have such a better investment over there, like Black banks. I mean, but if we have Black banks, they're not putting their dollars in there, but who are we with? We bank with Wells Fargo, we bank with Chase, we bank with Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, SunTrust, ViStar, Truist, like all of these different, but how many of our dollars is sitting in their banks that they're able to use for development and distribution? And then we have our banks are, it's not the same thing. So just remember, every time you pull a dollar out of your pocket and you spend it with somebody else, that's a disinvestment from your community, and that's the further investment for their community. And so this is the kind of mindset that we have to think in. And of course, we don't, I named in the early part of this conversation, I named some of those things in industries that at least we can kind of be focused on. If you want to still wear Louis, Gucci, Fendi, you know, if that's what gives you this sense of like value and worth, then okay, cool, do that. But I just think it's kind of weird because what you're doing is you're giving them free advertisement. You're literally, and don't forget, like I said, I was in Paris, France, where I came to this realization. I might have told this in another video if you watch one of my other videos. I was in Paris, France at the mall when I came to the realization that Gucci, who was it? It's Gucci, I think Louis, um, maybe Fendi, but well, of course, like Hilfiger, but these were names of families. And what we were doing through hip hop or just through our everyday fashion, being young, fly, and flashy, is we're giving free advertisements and free marketing for their families' brands so that they can get more of our dollars, only to take among their family members and set their kids up and their future generations for life, so that they don't have to worry about anything and that they have access to pretty much the world and everything they want in it, whether that's the trips, going to school, healthcare, nice cars, just whatever, right? And then we walk around in this, and when another person sees you in it, we kind of look at it like, dang, right, that's a dope outfit. I gotta go get me one of those too. And whatever you're getting, any of those pieces that you're buying, don't forget, you are disinvesting in your family and you have invested in another family. And I was like, wow, like, you know, why don't we have our own brands? Yeah, I will point the finger at myself. Like, why don't I have my last name is Thomas? Why don't I have a Thomas brand? You know, a shirt or something like that. And then why are my friends paying $25 for my shirt? I ain't even trying to, like, YSL. You saying, oh, just whatever. Like, I'm not gonna charge you $200 for that. But why are we so apprehensive about making those investments? Why are we so apprehensive about creating, right? We're not a culture of producers, we're a culture of consumers. So that's the first question. Why don't we produce our own thing? And then on the other side of that, why don't we buy, you know, among our own people? And why are we so hesitant about it? And of course, you know, why do we always want the discount? Like, that's the age-old conversation about that. And I think those are real issues. Like, you hear everybody, you'll see people talk about it in the comment section, but everybody's coming from a place of complaining. It's like we don't know how to have these conversations in mild mannered and emotionally intelligent ways, right? So once the emotions get heightened, it detracts from us really figuring out a viable solution. And so that's what I'm trying to get us to, is like we can have disagreements. Why, why is in our community, anytime we disagree, it's got to be so much hate and vitriol that comes on the back end, right? That vibrates through that. So it's like it always causes us to vibrate and exist in the lower frequencies of ourselves, which that essentially makes us go outside of ourselves. Like it's actually takes more effort to constantly be angry, to be mean, to be hateful and vengeful. That takes a lot of intentional effort, right? And if you do it so many times, of course, it becomes a habit. But there's a great book, Atomic Habits, like by James Clear. Get that book if you haven't looked at it, because as you formulate these habits unknowingly and subconsciously, will you equally in return, you can undo those habits and create and build good habits. And so when I talk about us being intellectually lazy, we, like, people, I hear people say, man, reading is just not my thing, where I can't sit there and read, or, I just can't. And it's like, yeah, of course, because you don't do it. Like 100%. It takes so much manpower and so many hours to cultivate a habit and to create discipline. That's why so many people don't do it. So as humans, naturally, we're going to take the path of least resistance. We're going to do things that create opportunities for us to go down the easy road, right? But what we fail to understand is that at first things are difficult, at first things are hard, but the more we do them, the more they become easier. What you have to do is get to the point of breakthrough, right? So you constantly hitting up here, and eventually, if you keep going, you're going to come full throttle through, and then that thing that which was hard at first now becomes easy, and then it becomes a habit, right? Just something that you naturally do. It's muscle memory at that point. And I think as you also read with intentionality, right? You're reading because you're trying to figure out a solution to an issue. That causes a different approach. So now we get into talking about seeing things as opportunities instead of obligations. When you see things as obligations, it kind of dampens your spirit, your heightened spirit for wanting to do something, right? But then when you see it as an opportunity for learning, how can I set my family up for a better situation? How can I myself, right? Our community doesn't get better until individuals start to get better. Remember, organizations and community are made up of individuals, and those individuals then become grouped up and they begin to operate in a central manner, right? So then that then becomes representative of how outsiders look at the organization and how they describe the organization. So now, my approach is that as being an individual, I always wanted to come in and I wanted to be an asset, whether I was an asset to a company or I was an asset to a person. What I did not want to do was become a liability. And the first problem that I think a lot of people have is we're not even approaching relationships and companies, work from that mindset at all. We don't even think about that. It doesn't even go in our mind. So what happens is that we just end up existing as who we are. And it's like, take me for who I am, take it or leave it. Like I am who I am, and so what? And that again, that's a sense of laziness, right? It's a sense of laziness, but more so, it's also an expression of like not being nonchalant, but just also not being intentional, right? Not being deliberate. And so when you approach relationships, when you approach people as wanting to be an asset and not a liability, you do a lot of checking and correcting of yourself. You do a lot of like, well, how can I add value to this person? Not how can I take away? How can I become an aid to this person, right? But not become a burden. And when you do that, you also then have to do a lot of internal work. You have to do a lot of work. Like I sit in this living room or I sit back in my office, and a lot of times spend a lot of the times reading, right? So whether I'm reading John Maxwell, like I said, whether I'm reading James Clear, that book Atomic Habits, whether I'm reading about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, like I'm always looking and searching for, all right, I hear that these are all phenomenal figures, right? Or I hear that these are great concepts to adopt for myself. So let me learn that so I can now start to become that, right? Because I have heights that I want to go to, I have places that I want to soar to end up existing, right? And I have a way that I want to represent myself in this world. And in order to do that, it takes a lot of work. And I think that what happens is we're not charting our own course for life. We're just kind of just happenstance. Is what it is. So then you get down to the golden years of your life, and you may not have much to show for it. And the one thing that also really inspired me to that is ancient Egypt, right? And you look at how the world pyramids, temples, and everything last so long. And I was always just captivated by the pages of history are remembering these individuals for thousands and thousands of years after they have perished and gone on. And I surely am not trying to be forgotten after I'm gone. So it's like, well, what is it that I need to do so that I can be remembered, but not for my that's kind of like a little bit of the selfish part, but the part that's unselfish is the answer is in by being a benefit and value to others. Because what happens is that when you're a benefit and a value to others, those people forever speak your name, and the way that we revive our ancestors and their legacy and their spirit so that once they've gone on, they haven't gone on into oblivion, is that we have to speak their name. So in order to speak their name and to do it with responsibility, you have to read their story, right? And you have to understand their story, place yourself in those times, and then begin to explain that, but try to fit their lives and their ideology in the present and now. And so that's always been my approach. And if I had to give a advice, right? If I had to give advice to my community or people in my community, it would simply be to develop yourself into the best version of yourself that you can. In order to do that, you have to do the research, you have to be intentional, you have to listen to the videos, YouTube videos, and just approach people by, again, trying to be an asset to people and not be a liability. Our community is stuck in a rut because we're not doing that. We're just trying to fit in, not go beyond the standard that is met there. Now, I won't even say that that's a universal standard that exists. I always think that the proper standard. Mm, uh, let me read this also to you real quick because I think that this is important as well. Um, what was that? What was that called? There was a quote. There was a quote that I was having the kids read for this class, this Black History and um, culture class that I'm teaching for the summer, and it's just it's so important right now. I probably won't be able to find it, but I'll just tell you the sentiments of it. It essentially said along the lines of, don't judge a people or organization based off of the negative actors. Judge an organization based off, or an organization and people based off of the best representation of what that organization or what that culture should be. Too many times we allow negative examples to then be the narratives that we run with to then explain something about a particular group of people. And I think internally we know that that's not right. We know that we shouldn't do that. But I think when you are coming from a place of where you feel invaluable and where you feel less than, you naturally then want to pull people down with you, and you want to try to find a way to elevate yourself by pulling down and bringing down others. So really wanted to impress upon their minds, the kids that I'm teaching, that it's essential that you judge your community, your culture, and you judge other cultures off of the best actors and the best representatives and as well as schools or whatever, off the best representatives of what comes out of those people, what comes out of that culture, not by the negative. So, you know, like I said, this was just a freestyle. I just hopped on here because I was sitting around on the fourth, had some extra time. I was doing some reading, researching naturally as I do, getting ready for next week and for my next talk. And I just turned the camera on, put the mic up. Like I said, sitting here in my living room on this 4th of July. And, all of this is, I guess, in the spirit of really representing freedom, right? Yeah, you may be free, um, free from bondage, and the freedom is really the opportunity to do something, right? Because you have a choice. You can either be less than, or you can be empowering, right? And you can become the best of what you can be. You have the freedom to go either way. But with that freedom also comes responsibility. And I also think with that freedom, we don't necessarily do the right thing with the responsibility that we have in becoming the best version of ourselves. And that's to ourselves and to others. So hopefully, this talk, anytime I get on here and talk, hopefully you found something that was beneficial and you didn't listen passively, but you actually listen with intention. Next time I hop on here, I'll probably definitely get into some more data, some more facts, statistics, and all of that. But I think sometimes you just need to have. That's why I made another channel on YouTube, but I didn't go anywhere with it. But sometimes you just need to have casual conversations, and you also need to have courageous conversations as well. And we need to learn how to disagree responsibly, how to disagree from a point of still a point of love, and we also most important thing is we have to have standards for ourselves and we have to have standards for others. All of this action activity, you have to turn the mirror on yourself and try to figure out how are you the responsible party to what's happening in our communities. Whether you go Chicago, Baltimore, I don't care, wherever you go, there is a level of responsibility that we have because we're not checking each other. We're not correcting. Let me say not checking, right? We're not correcting each other when others fall short. And of course, you're gonna have bad days, right? It's never gonna be perfect, but that's why you need a circle, and that's why you need a support system, and you need to be vulnerable enough and honest enough to say, today's not my best day. I'm not in the proper headspace to bring my best forward. So I think before I do something that's wrong, maybe I need to retract for a minute. I need to reset. And then that support system, that circle needs to hear what you're saying and then figure out how they can help you fill the gap for that next 24 hours and maybe the next 48 hours for the time that you need, right? You can't, I always tell a person, you have to, don't, like Jay-Z said, don't run from the pain, go towards it. So when you have to sit in that dark space, go do that. But you can't stay in that dark space. You can't stay down there. So you should have a support system that can help you fill that gap in that time of need. But then you have to lift yourself up out of there, which is why you need to have the proper tools, whether that's the meditation, looking at you. One thing I do is look at YouTube videos help to motivate, that help to motivate me, that can maybe change my spirit, change my momentum. And that's me doing the part that I need to do to get myself up and out of that. So our community has to do more about pushing people to the better versions of themselves. We have to stop accepting mediocrity out of other people, especially within our organizations. And we must stop allowing the negative aspects of our organizations of our community to then represent us on the bigger stage of life. All of that is within our control. And so if we are not doing that, then the only thing that I can properly say to you is that you're being a coward, right? You're being soft, you're being a punk, right? Because by you not doing that, you're allowing more detriment, disaster, and um disaster, and more, I guess, just low value, excuse my French, fuckery to occur in our community. And the reason why I felt comfortable cussing at that point is because at some point there has to be a breaking point as to where you have to know that this is no longer, you're not going to tolerate this, is not acceptable. Because as that occurs, remember, those people are also making choices, and you're making a choice as well. And you're making a decision, which is your responsibility as an adult. You're making a decision to allow that to exist, and they're making a decision to exist in those actions, because we all know that wrong is wrong. So yeah, that pretty much what I got for you today. Definitely feels good to get back on here. Always is gonna feel a little awkward to be on here talking. Uh and never knowing who's listening, who's not listening. But I can tell you there are many people that I listen to that don't even know that I necessarily listen to them, but they definitely have profound impacts and changes. So YouTube the internet is just a great place and a great space. And hey, I'm only trying to change one and impact one. So that's where I'm starting at. We got goals, and you're pretty much on this pathway with me. If you are watching this video, if you saw this video, then you are watching my growth and you're watching my work. You're watching my insecurities, like you're watching the confidence level grow, skill sets grow. Um, yeah, like I said, this was a freestyle. I got no pad, no paper, no notes, no nothing. Um, the best I can tell you is just be the best version of yourself that you can be. Work hard. No, not even work hard. Work at it, right? Make it fun. Like, this is life, you know. Don't take life too seriously. It's not like any of us make it out alive anyway. And with that, I say peace.